If you have ever wondered whether heaven's supply could run out, whether the blessings promised in God's word still flow today, then hear this truth. The bank of God is unlimited, its vaults overflowing with wealth beyond measure, waiting for the one who dares to claim it by faith. There is a bank far greater than any on earth, a treasury so vast that no human mind can measure its wealth. It is the bank of God, the storehouse of all good things, holding infinite supply for every man, woman, and child who dares to believe. In this divine bank, there is no recession, no lack, no fear of loss, no limitation. Its doors never close, its vaults never empty, and its resources never diminish, day and night. This celestial treasury stands open, waiting for the soul bold enough to make a claim by faith. Many look to earthly banks for security, trusting in the numbers written on paper or glowing on screens. Yet even the richest bank on earth can fail. Its wealth is bound by human systems, by economic shifts, by markets that rise and fall like waves in a storm. But the bank of God is established on eternal law, unshaken by the chaos of the world. It does not depend on governments or gold reserves. It depends solely on the unchanging nature of the Creator, the one who spoke the universe into being and who holds all power to supply every need. When you understand this truth, fear dissolves like mist before the morning sun. For how can you fear lack when your source is infinite? How can you doubt provision when your supplier owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, the gold in every mine, the ideas that birth wealth, the opportunities that open doors? The divine bank never runs dry because it draws from the limitless life of God Himself, the source of all abundance. But this bank does not operate like the banks of men. You cannot approach it with doubt in your heart and expect its vaults to open. You cannot speak words of lack and expect wealth to flow in. The bank of God responds only to faith. Faith is the password, the key, the golden thread that connects you to the unseen supply. The one who believes without wavering, who speaks words of plenty even when appearances shout lack, writes a check on the bank of God that must be honored in due season. Think of it this way. Every promise in sacred law is like currency backed by the wealth of heaven. When you believe the promise, when you speak it forth with conviction, you are endorsing that heavenly check with your faith. The moment you release it, the divine bank sets spiritual law into motion to bring the supply from the unseen into the seen. It may come as money, or as an idea, or as a sudden opportunity. It may arrive through channels you expect, or through paths you never imagined. But come it must, for spiritual law cannot be broken. Many souls live as spiritual paupers while holding accounts in the richest bank in existence. They walk through life saying, "I never have enough. I can't afford this. I am always lacking." Every such word is like writing insufficient faith across their spiritual checks. The bank of God hears only faith. It honors only belief. When the tongue speaks lack, the account seems empty, though in truth, it overflows with untapped supply waiting to be claimed. To live in constant awareness of this unlimited treasury is to walk through life with unshakable confidence. Needs may arise, bills may come due, challenges may appear, but the soul anchored in divine supply simply smiles and says, "The bank of God has already provided. My account is full, my supply is on its way." Such a one refuses to panic, for panic shuts the door of faith. Such a one refuses to beg, for begging implies doubt in the abundance already promised. Instead, they stand firm, speaking words of gratitude, as if the blessing were already in hand. The divine bank never runs dry, and it never withholds from those who claim their right as children of the infinite. Yet the claim must be made in the present moment. Too many live in the shadow of someday. Someday I'll be prosperous. Someday things will get better. Someday I'll have enough. But the bank of God responds only to the nundu of faith. The moment you dare to speak, "I have all I need, supply is flowing to me now," the divine bank honors my faith this very moment. The law begins its work. Time may be required for the channels to form, for the unseen to clothe itself in the seen, but the supply itself is already released the instant faith speaks. Consider the lilies of the field. They neither toil nor spin, yet they grow in beauty and abundance, because they live rooted in the source, without anxiety or striving. Birds do not store grain in barns, yet the Creator feeds them daily from the overflow of His provision. Are you not of greater worth than birds or flowers? If nature itself draws unceasing supply from the divine bank without fear of tomorrow, how much more should you, created in the image of the infinite, live in trust that all you need is already provided? This is the secret to take your eyes off appearances and fix them on the unseen reality of abundance. Appearances change, bank accounts rise and fall, jobs come and go, markets tremble, but the source remains constant. When you look beyond the visible and anchor your faith in the invisible supply, you connect with the bank that never runs dry. There is no need too great for this bank to meet. There is no dream too bold for this treasury to fund. Whether it is daily bread or the resources to build a great work, the supply already exists in the invisible, waiting for your faith to call it forth. The Creator does not ration blessings as if His storehouse were limited. He gives according to the measure of your faith. Little faith, little withdrawal. Great faith, great supply. The bank itself is unlimited, but it releases according to what you dare to believe. Therefore enlarge your faith. Speak boldly. Refuse to entertain thoughts of lack. The world may say, times are hard, but you declare, the bank of God is my source, and it never runs dry. Others may complain of closed doors, but you affirm, new doors open for me by divine right. The way is made, supply flows freely. The treasury of heaven backs every step I take. Every need is already provided before you ask. The bank of God knew the demand before it arose. Your role is simply to believe, to speak, to expect. Faith makes the invisible visible. Gratitude seals the blessing with joy. Obedience keeps you in alignment with the flow. When the world shouts lack, faith whispers plenty. When circumstances seem empty, faith sees the vaults of heaven overflowing. When fear says, "What if there isn't enough?" faith laughs and says, "There is always more than enough, for the divine bank never runs dry." If the bank of God holds infinite supply, then your word is the demand slip that draws it forth. Just as no earthly bank releases funds without a signed request, so the bank of God responds only to words spoken in faith. For words are spiritual containers, carrying the currency of belief. What you speak with conviction writes the order upon heaven's treasury, and the moment it leaves your lips in unwavering trust, the law begins to fill it with substance. This is why idle words carry such weight. Every complaint, every fearful declaration, every careless remark writes its own demand slip, not for abundance but for lack, for the law is impartial and brings forth what is spoken with feeling behind it. A man may say, "I can never afford this," and the universe answers, "As you have spoken, so shall it be." Another may declare, "Money flows to me easily and endlessly," and the law moves circumstances, people, and events to fulfill the decree. The tongue signs the check, and the treasury of heaven delivers what is ordered. Yet many souls, not knowing this law, speak words of defeat over their own lives, and then wonder why lack persists. They rise in the morning saying, "Another day, another struggle," and the law stamps their demand slip approved, bringing exactly what they have spoken. Others declare, "I can't seem to get ahead," and the universe, hearing no contradiction of faith, arranges events to match the decree. They have written their checks for limitation and wonder why abundance does not come, forgetting that every word carries creative power. To claim from the bank of God, one must speak with the authority of a child who knows his inheritance cannot be withheld. No begging, no pleading, no anxious repetition is required. Only calm, steadfast declaration born of inner knowing. When you say, "I receive my good now, the wealth of heaven flows to me in divine order," the law hears the voice of faith and sets spiritual forces into motion. Like water seeking an open channel, supply flows where the demand slip of faith directs it. But it is not enough to speak once with conviction and then contradict it with fear-filled words afterward. Many plant seeds of faith and then dig them up with anxious declarations of doubt. They speak boldly in prayer, yet later say to a friend, "I hope it works out, but times are so hard." Such double-minded speech writes one check for abundance and another for lack, and the law honors both in confusion, bringing delay instead of swift manifestation. The demand slip must be consistent, unwavering, holding fast to the promise until the blessing appears in full view. When a king issues a decree, he does not wonder whether it will be carried out. He speaks once, and his word becomes law. So it is with the one who understands the bank of God. Your words are decrees shaping unseen substance into form. Speak as one having authority, not as a beggar hoping for favor. The bank of God does not release supply to anxious pleading, but to confident command grounded in faith. There is great power in speaking as if the thing were already done. To say, "I will have abundance someday," keeps it always in the future. But to declare, "I have abundance now," it manifests in divine timing, brings the unseen into the present where faith can act upon it. The moment you speak, spiritual law begins shaping circumstances, drawing opportunities, aligning people, opening doors, arranging events to honor the words you have released. Even silent thoughts carry weight, for thought is but unspoken word, yet it is the spoken word, released with feeling, that stamps the demand slip with full authority. A thought may pass like a cloud across the mind, but a spoken word plants the seed firmly in the soil of the subconscious, where spiritual law takes it as command. Speak lack, reap lack. Speak abundance, reap abundance. The law cannot be mocked, it brings forth after its kind, unfailingly, unchangingly, with mathematical precision. Some imagine that long prayers, filled with many words, will move the heavens, but it is not the length, but the faith behind the word that opens the treasury of God. A single sentence spoken in unwavering trust carries more weight than hours of anxious repetition. One declaration of faith can override years of idle speech if spoken with full conviction and never withdrawn by later doubt. Consider the one who stands before a barren field and declares, "This land brings forth abundantly by divine right." He does not stare at the empty soil day after day saying, "Nothing is happening, perhaps my words failed." No, he waters the land, prepares it in faith, and knows the harvest must come, because the law of seed time and harvest cannot be broken. So it is with words spoken to the bank of God. They are seeds sown in the invisible, and the harvest appears in the visible according to the unwavering faith of the sower. Many fail to claim their blessings because they wait to see before they speak, forgetting that speaking is the very act that sets seeing in motion. The world says, "Seeing is believing," but spiritual law says, "Believe and you shall see." To wait for signs before speaking is to delay the blessing, for the word goes forth first, then the manifestation follows. Speak it boldly before it appears, and the law will bring it forth as surely as dawn follows night. Your word is your demand slip, and gratitude is your signature upon it. When you give thanks as if the blessing were already delivered, you seal the request with joy and confidence. Gratitude says, "I know it is done. I rejoice before it appears." This rejoicing is faith in action, and it hastens the manifestation, for the law responds swiftly where faith and gratitude work together as one. So guard your words as you would guard treasure, for indeed they are the treasure that draws treasure to you. Let no complaint cross your lips, for every complaint writes a check to lack. Let no fear-filled statement escape your mouth, for fear draws the very thing it dreads. Instead, speak abundance in the face of lack. Speak health in the face of sickness. Speak provision in the face of need, for the bank of God honors only the demand slip of faith-filled words spoken without wavering. If the bank of God holds infinite supply, and your word writes the demand slip, then faith is the only currency by which that check is cashed. No earthly wealth, no human power, no influence of men can move the vaults of heaven. The one thing that draws substance from the unseen into the seen is faith, for faith is the medium through which divine riches flow. Just as paper money holds value only because men agree to honor it, so the words you speak carry power only when backed by the wealth of unwavering belief. The bank of God trades in no other coin. It does not respond to fear, for fear carries the currency of doubt and closes the vaults tight. It does not respond to worry, for worry signals mistrust in the source. It does not respond to anxiety, for anxiety says the supply may fail. It answers only to faith, that calm, confident assurance that what is spoken in alignment with divine law must come to pass regardless of appearances. Faith is the evidence of things not yet seen, the title deed to blessings not yet delivered in the physical realm. When you hold a title deed to land, you need not see the property each day to know it is yours. The paper itself carries the guarantee. So it is with faith. It takes hold of unseen supply and says, "This is mine by divine right," long before the delivery truck of manifestation pulls into view. Yet faith is not mere wishing. Wishing hopes, faith knows. Wishing looks at circumstances and says, "I desire this." But faith looks beyond circumstances and declares, "It is already mine in the invisible, therefore it must appear in the visible." Wishing trembles when the winds of adversity blow, but faith stands unshaken, for it is rooted in eternal law, not in shifting appearances. When you plant a seed in the ground, you do not dig it up each day to see if it is growing. You water it, protect it, and wait in confidence, for you know the law of growth will not fail. So it is with faith. Once you speak the word, once you release the demand slip to the bank of God, you rest in assurance that the law is already at work. To worry afterward is to dig up the seed, to interfere with the process, to block the flow that was already moving on your behalf. Faith acts as if the answer were already in hand. It speaks as one who has received, not as one who is waiting. It gives thanks before the blessing arrives, for gratitude in advance is the highest form of faith. When you say, "I thank you that my supply flows freely now," even while the purse seems empty, you are paying in the only currency heaven accepts. And the bank of God, seeing the faith behind your words, releases the blessing in divine order. The world trains men to trust in money, in banks, in jobs, in investments, yet all these are but channels. They are not the source. The channel may change 100 times, but the source remains the same. Faith ties you to the source, not to the channel. Lose a job, and fear says, "The supply is gone." But faith declares, "The bank of God is still open, new channels now appear." Investments may fail, markets may collapse, but the bank of God remains untouched, waiting for the one who understands that faith alone opens the treasury of heaven. When the children of Israel wandered in the wilderness, manna fell from heaven each morning. They could not store it up, could not hoard it for tomorrow, for it spoiled if kept overnight. Why? That they might learn daily dependence upon the source, not upon visible supply. Faith gathers fresh manna each morning, confident that the same source will provide again tomorrow. It never says, "What if there is lack ahead?" For it knows the bank of God cannot run dry. Faith is not moved by delays, for delay is not denial. The law works in perfect order, arranging people, places, events, and timing so the blessing arrives in the right way at the right moment. Impatience digs up the seed before harvest, but faith waits with praise, knowing the harvest is sure though unseen. Some believe they must see signs first before trusting, yet spiritual law reverses this order entirely. The world says, "Seeing is believing," but the bank of God says, "Believe first, and you shall see." Faith speaks the word when nothing in the visible supports it, for it knows the invisible holds the reality long before the senses confirm it. A single grain of faith outweighs a mountain of doubt, for faith aligns with eternal law, while doubt has no law to support it. The moment you believe, truly believe, you set forces in motion older than time itself, forces that cannot fail because they rest upon the nature of the infinite. Faith is the hand that reaches into the unseen and draws the answer into form. When Peter stepped out upon the water at the Master's word, the law of gravity itself bent beneath the higher law of faith. The waves held him as long as his gaze remained upon the source. But when he looked at the storm, instead of the word that had called him forth, fear replaced faith, and he began to sink. So it is with every soul. Look to appearances, and you sink beneath circumstances. Hold your gaze upon the promise, and the waves carry you where reason says you cannot walk. Faith laughs at impossibilities, for it knows there is no lack in the infinite. It speaks to the mountain of debt, of illness, of limitation, and says, "Be removed and cast into the sea." And if the word is spoken without doubt, the law honors the decree. For faith commands where fear pleads, faith acts where fear hesitates, faith rejoices where fear complains. The currency of heaven never loses value. It does not rise and fall with markets, does not weaken with age, does not vanish in crisis. One grain of it can open doors no man can shut, bring opportunities no human hand could arrange, release blessings no earthly bank could equal. The one who learns to live by faith lives as heir to an unlimited treasury, drawing supply as freely as breathing air, never anxious, never fearful, never doubting, for faith rests in the certainty that the bank of God cannot fail. If faith is the currency of heaven, then gratitude is the key that swings wide the vault of divine supply. Gratitude is the language of the fulfilled promise. The song sung by the soul who knows the blessing is already theirs though not yet visible to the eye. It is the voice of faith rejoicing in advance, the spiritual seal upon the demand slip that says to the bank of God, "I trust your timing, your method, your abundance, and I celebrate the answer before it appears." Many pray, but few give thanks before the blessing comes. They wait for visible evidence, forgetting that gratitude is not payment after delivery, but proof of faith before the manifestation. To thank the bank of God in advance is to say, "I know the supply is already mine in the unseen, and I rejoice as if it were already in my hands." This gratitude in advance throws open the vault, for it shows the law you expect the answer as surely as the sun expects the dawn. Gratitude aligns the heart with abundance, for one cannot complain and give thanks at the same time. The complaining tongue writes checks to lack, while the grateful tongue writes checks to plenty. Gratitude speaks the language of the infinite, for it recognizes that every breath, every opportunity, every blessing already received is proof of a source that never fails. The soul that dwells continually in thanks lives in perpetual harmony with supply, drawing more and more good as naturally as a magnet draws iron. When the Master stood before the tomb of Lazarus, before there was any sign of life, he lifted his eyes and said, "Father, I thank you." He gave thanks before the miracle, showing that gratitude precedes manifestation, that thanksgiving opens the door for the power of God to flow unhindered. When the 5 loaves and 2 fish were lifted heavenward, thanks was given before they multiplied to feed thousands, proving again that gratitude unlocks increase where reason sees only lack. Gratitude changes the atmosphere of the mind. Where fear says, "What if there is not enough?" Gratitude says, "Thank you that there is always more than enough." Where anxiety frets over bills and debts, gratitude declares, "Thank you that supply flows to meet every obligation in perfect timing." The moment you turn from complaint to thanksgiving, you step out of the vibration of lack into the frequency of abundance, and the law responds to the new song you sing. The grateful heart finds good even in seeming delay, for it knows the supply is already on its way, though hidden from sight. It thanks the bank of God for perfect timing, for right channels, for doors opening at the exact moment they should. Gratitude never hurries, for it rests in the assurance that the answer cannot fail to arrive, and so it celebrates even before the blessing comes into view. Those who wait to give thanks until the blessing appears walk by sight, but gratitude walks by faith, and faith is what moves the vaults of heaven. The moment you give thanks as if the thing were already done, you release the law to bring it forth in divine order. Thanksgiving is faith rejoicing in advance. And rejoicing speeds the manifestation, for joy signals that you believe the promise without question. Gratitude multiplies whatever it touches. Give thanks for the smallest coin, and it grows into larger supply. Bless the meal before you, and it seems to stretch further than reason says it should. Bless the work of your hands, and opportunities expand beyond what logic could arrange. Bless every dollar in your possession, and it attracts more of its kind. For what you bless increases, and what you curse with complaint diminishes before your eyes. Some look at their purse and say, "It is so small," and the purse remains small, for complaint draws only what it expects. But another looks at the same purse and says, "I thank you that this grows and multiplies under grace," and the purse begins to swell, for gratitude releases divine law to enlarge the blessing. The bank of God responds not to the size of the seed, but to the faith and thanksgiving with which it is sown. Gratitude is the song that rises above circumstances. It sings of plenty in the face of lack, of healing in the face of illness, of victory in the face of defeat. It calls things that are not as though they were, rejoicing before reason sees cause to rejoice. And because spiritual law honors faith expressed in thanksgiving, the unseen supply hastens to appear, for the vault swings wide when the song of gratitude fills the air. Every time you give thanks, you align with the abundance of the infinite. Every time you bless rather than complain, you draw increase instead of decrease. Every time you rejoice as though the blessing were already delivered, you speed the law into action on your behalf. Gratitude opens the vault, because it proves you believe the vault was never locked to begin with, that the bank of God holds nothing back from the one who trusts, believes, and rejoices before the answer appears. If faith draws the blessing and gratitude swings open the vault, then obedience is what keeps you aligned with the flow of divine supply. For many speak words of faith, many even give thanks before the blessing appears, yet when the inner voice of divine direction whispers a step to take, a door to walk through, a gift to give, or a word to speak, they hesitate, they reason, they delay. And in that delay, the current of supply slows, for the law moves along paths of obedience, and blessings travel through channels prepared by willing hearts. Obedience does not always come with trumpet blasts or grand instructions. Often it is the quiet nudge to give when fear says to hold back, to speak when pride says to remain silent, to move forward when appearances scream that the way is closed. The bank of God has infinite supply, yet it flows along lines of divine order, and obedience keeps you within that order where blessings rush unhindered like water through an open canal. When the widow of Zarephath gathered sticks for her last meal, the word of the Lord came through the prophet, "Make me a cake first, and your barrel of meal will not waste, nor your jar of oil run dry." Reason would have said, "Feed yourself first. There is barely enough as it is." Fear would have said, "What if this fails?" But obedience moved her to act in faith, and as she obeyed, the supply flowed day after day, never running dry though the land lay under famine. So it is with every soul. Divine law whispers instructions that often seem small, yet obedience to these whispers opens doors no man can shut. One is told inwardly, "Release this gift," and upon giving, channels of provision open wider than before. Another hears, "Go here, speak there, move now," and upon obedience, opportunities appear as if from nowhere, for the bank of God releases supply through pathways prepared by obedient hearts. Obedience aligns you with timing as well as direction. Many grow impatient, trying to force blessings before the appointed hour, yet spiritual law knows perfect seasons. The obedient soul trusts the timing, moving when prompted, waiting when told, never pushing ahead of divine order, never lagging behind when the inner voice says, "Now is the moment." In this alignment of timing and action, blessings flow swiftly, for the law works without obstruction where obedience clears the path. Some wonder why supply seems delayed, though they speak faith and give thanks. Often the delay waits upon obedience to some inner prompting long ignored. The law will not bypass the step given, for each instruction leads to the next, and blessings await along the path of completed steps. The bank of God is not withholding, it is waiting for alignment, for obedience to open the channel through which supply may flow without hindrance. Obedience may call you to release something before your hands feel ready: time, talent, resources, even old fears or resentments long carried. For nothing blocks divine supply like the closed hand of one unwilling to release when prompted. The law multiplies what is given in faith, but it cannot fill what is clutched tight in fear. When the inner voice whispers, "Give," and you obey, you prove your trust in the bank of God as your source, not the thing you release. And as you prove this trust, the law pours back multiplied supply, for the universe rushes to fill every vacuum created by obedience. Obedience often seems simple, yet it carries power unseen. A fisherman told to cast his net on the right side of the boat obeys, and hauls in a catch too great for the nets to hold. Servants told to fill jars with water obey, and witness water blush into wine before their eyes. A man told to stretch forth his withered hand obeys, and feels strength flood into muscles long lifeless. In every case, the power flows where obedience opens the channel, for divine law honors the heart quick to act upon its prompting. Even in matters of provision, obedience guides steps that reason cannot see. One may feel led to apply for a certain opportunity, to call a certain person, to pursue a certain idea, and upon obedience, doors open where none existed before. Another may be told inwardly to wait though circumstances press hard, and in the waiting, a greater door swings wide that rushing ahead would have missed entirely. The bank of God releases supply through paths only obedience can unlock, for the blessing follows divine order, not human impatience. Obedience keeps the heart free from the pride of self-direction. It teaches trust in the source rather than in one's own plans, for divine wisdom sees beyond the moment while human reason sees only appearances. When told to release, you may not see the harvest yet forming. When told to act, you may not see the door yet swinging wide. But obedience moves in faith, trusting that every step leads toward greater good, though the path wins where the eye cannot yet see the end. The obedient heart walks in constant supply because it never blocks the flow with rebellion, fear, or delay. It speaks the word of faith, gives thanks before the blessing appears, listens for the inner direction of spirit, and moves at once when the prompting comes. In such a life, channels stay open, blessings arrive on time, opportunities unfold in order, and the bank of God pours forth provision as naturally as rivers flow to the sea. If obedience aligns you with supply, then the words you speak afterward must remain in harmony with that flow, for nothing opens or closes the channels of blessing like the tongue. Speak words of fear, lack, or limitation, and you slam the door on the very thing your faith has set in motion. Speak only abundance, only plenty, only the language of divine wealth, and the channels stay open wide, carrying blessings from the vaults of the infinite into every corner of your life. For words are not mere sounds carried on air, they are creative forces shaping substance itself. The universe takes them as commands, and the law moves to fulfill them without question. Every word spoken with feeling goes forth like a seed, and the soil of spirit returns a harvest after its kind. Speak lack, and lack appears. Speak plenty, and plenty flows. Speak fear, and fear multiplies. Speak faith, and blessings rush into answer. Many souls undo their own prayers by careless speech. They pray for supply, then complain of hard times. They declare abundance in the morning, then speak of lack to friends by noon. They sow seeds of faith, but water them with the poison of fear-filled words, and then wonder why the harvest delays. The law cannot bring abundance where the tongue continually writes checks to poverty, for it honors every word spoken with conviction, whether for good or for ill. To speak only abundance is to guard the lips as one would guard a treasury, letting no word escape that contradicts divine supply. It is to let the tongue agree only with the promises of God, never with the fears of men. It is to declare plenty when appearances shout lack, to speak increase when circumstances suggest decrease, to affirm provision when reason sees no way forward. For the bank of God responds to faith-filled words spoken against the tide of appearances. When the widow spoke to the prophet, saying there was only enough meal for one last cake before she and her son would die, the prophet answered not with agreement to her lack, but with words of abundance. Your barrel of meal will not waste, and your jar of oil will not fail. He spoke as one who saw beyond appearances to the endless supply of the infinite, and his words became the channel through which provision flowed day after day. So must every soul learn to speak as if the promise were already fulfilled, for to declare, I am always provided for, the wealth of heaven flows to me in perfect order, even when the purse seems empty, is to set divine law in motion toward abundance. To say, new channels of supply open to me now, opportunities come by divine right, even when doors appear closed, is to call things that are not as though they were until they become visible in the seen world. Words carry vibration, and the vibration of abundance calls abundance into form. Speak of lack, and you tune your life to the frequency of limitation. Speak of plenty, and you harmonize with the flow of divine wealth, drawing to yourself people, ideas, opportunities, and resources that match the song you sing. For the tongue sets the tone of life's symphony, and the universe plays back the melody you choose. When the inner prompting leads to action, let your words agree with that direction, never against it. Do not say, I hope this works, for hope alone is uncertain, but speak, this unfolds in perfect success, divine supply never fails. Do not say, I fear there is not enough, but declare, there is always more than enough, for the bank of God is unlimited. Do not say, I never prosper, but affirm, everything I do prospers under grace, for abundance follows me wherever I go. Some believe they must describe things as they are, yet spiritual law calls you to describe things as you desire them to be, for words spoken today shape the reality of tomorrow. To speak only what the senses report is to remain bound to appearances, but to speak abundance in the face of lack is to free yourself into the realm of faith where blessings multiply without limit. The tongue is a rudder steering the ship of life. Turn it toward lack, and life drifts into shortage. Turn it toward plenty, and life sails into endless supply. For the mouth speaks what the heart believes, and the law gives form to what the mouth declares. Therefore fill the heart with promises of abundance, until the mouth overflows with them, speaking only increase, only provision, only the language of wealth flowing freely from the infinite. Speak only abundance in private as well as in public, for the walls themselves seem to carry words into the atmosphere where the law takes hold of them. Speak increase over your home, your work, your finances, your health, your relationships, your every endeavor. Let no conversation pass your lips that does not align with divine supply, for every word spoken writes the next chapter of your life story. To speak only abundance is to live as one who knows the bank of God cannot run dry, that every demand slip of faith is backed by infinite wealth, that gratitude opens the vault, that obedience clears the channel, and that words seal the blessing with the vibration of plenty. Speak as one whose account in the bank of God overflows, and soon the seen will match the unseen, for spiritual law answers the tongue that refuses to speak lack, fear, or limitation, and gives form to the voice that declares only abundance with unwavering faith. When the soul at last awakens to the truth that the bank of God holds endless treasure, lack becomes only an old dream fading in the morning light of faith. The heart learns to draw upon this infinite storehouse, not with fear or striving, but with words of power, gratitude that sees the blessing before it comes, and obedience to the still, small voice that leads the way. Each thought becomes a seed of plenty, each declaration, a check drawn on the limitless riches of heaven. As the tongue speaks only increase, the life begins to mirror the language of faith, for the law never fails to return in kind what the lips and heart release. The bank of God waits for no special season, for it holds no boundary of time or space. It opens the moment faith speaks the word and keeps speaking until the unseen becomes the seen, the hoped for becomes the held, and the promise of abundance rises to meet the soul who dares to believe without wavering.